gentlemen, I should say gentlemen, it is L.E.G TV, the only fantasy football show specifically for your league, and wouldn't you believe it, we are here. It is playoff time, and how did we get here? Well, we're going to go through that, see all the teams that are in the runnings. Right now, we're going to go through the wild card matchups coming up next week, and the teams that have the bye, and also we're going to run through the very unpopular Hoffa bracket. We have some candidates already vying for the Hoffa. This guy right here, man, that's terrible. But first things first, most importantly, there was a bet that happened in this draft before the season started, in preseason, and the bet was between myself, Mr. John Dahlgren, and Ablash Reddy, that the winner or best record out of all three would win $300. Really, $200. Well, guess what, baby? The commission's on top, beat Nobby last week, so I get $200 from Dahlgren to Nobby. Woo! Celebrate! Celebrate! Yes, I'm broke. I'm broke. You better believe it. So, now that is out of the way, we've got some things to discuss here for this week. It is playoff edition, so let's look how we got here. So many teams vying for that number 6 spot. Dan Nickel was locked down. He was the favorite at 6-6. But lo and behold, the champ from last year lost to John Dahlgren, and that opened up the floodgates for a lot of teams to have a chance to sneak in, since Pat also lost last week. One of the key matchups we were looking at for the bet was myself versus Abalash Reddy. That went down to the wire on Monday night and barely pulled off the win, 179-159, thanks to Le'Veon Bell outscoring his projection, counteracting the A.J. Green monster game. And look who snuck in at number 6. It is David Plow. Dave Plow with the points, got 6 wins, and he is moving into the playoffs at the number 6 spot. He took down Bloodbath & Beyond Jason Servos, who's had a nightmare of the season. He still had a chance, but just not enough points. Not enough wins to get in. And Alan Nesson locked in the 2nd seed, barely being edged out by myself. Again, points were a huge factor here, as Alan and myself, the only teams to have 9 wins this season, locking down that bye. And he'll take on the highest seed out of the wild card round. Indy Snatch Pounders, as I mentioned before, takes down Pat, who is now in Hoffa contention. The man was number 1 in points and number 1 in points scored against. An ungodly amount of points scored against. Just not his year, even though his team was set to win, but everyone had their best game against them, including Indy Snatch Pounders, actually put up 172 points. I don't think he scored 170 all year, Mr. McCready, except I think he played me. He got that. But Intentional Pounding also pulling in the 3 seed. So Mick is safe. Mick has the 5 seed because he doesn't have that many points. He is still in, even though he lost to Joe. Joe is at 3rd. He gets that 3rd seed with a 161-123 win over Mick Barton. And like I said, the champ goes down nickel to nickel loss to John Dahlgren, 154-131. And that's where we are now. We are looking at the playoffs. So as it shakes out, we have in the divisional round, we have a great matchup. It is Abalash Reddy's Breeze's King of the Drews at the number 4 seed, taking on Mick and Blake Lives Matter at the number 5 seed. Now, we also have Joe Murdoch, the number 3 seed, taking on the wild card Cinderella team, David Plow, who we're actually going to hear from later on. He's going to be on the show for the first time ever. He's going to talk about his matchup. But first, let's dive into that pivotal rivalry matchup here in the first week. Abalash Reddy, who lost and had a chance to tie, but instead he's going to shell out $100 to this guy. He's not going to advance, so he is stuck right there at the number 4 seed, taking on Mick Barton. So let's look at the matchup here. Now, Abalash has relied heavily on the trio of New Orleans Saints players. He didn't start Breeze last week, and that was actually a smart idea to put Rivers in instead. And it looks like he's going to start Rivers again this week. But I'm talking about Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, and Mark Ingram, all big players for Abby all year, the reason why he's here. And not to mention A.J. Green, who had a monster game, but it wasn't enough. He has A.J. Green going against the Chicago Bears, which should be a good matchup. I do like Phillip Rivers instead of Drew Brees this week. Drew Brees is going up against Atlanta, who traditionally has big games, but it's a Thursday night game, and Thursday night games are hot, garbage. So let's look over at Mick's team. Now, Mick has a disadvantage here in the wide receiver, in my opinion. I think Avi's got the edge with Michael Thomas and A.J. Green. Mick's going to have to rely on some shaky boomer bust players. Javaris Landry for the Dolphins. He's going against the New England Patriots on Monday. Typically, the New England Patriots get played pretty tough by the Dolphins. I don't think it's going to happen with Jay Cutler there. Magic Mike Evans going against Detroit. That's probably going to be a big game for him as the Detroit secondary is not very good. And Mick going to Kirk Cousins at quarterback. So as we have it right now, it's Kirk Cousins versus Phillip Rivers. These were guys that were not on the radar in the first few rounds, and they've had some pretty big point production this year. This is where it gets shaky for Mick, the running backs. Samarji Pirine and Paul Barber relying on the backup, Paul Barber in Tampa Bay, to carry Mick. I also give the advantage to tight end to Abalash, as Abi's got Hunter Hurst Henry hooking up with Phillip Rivers on the same team. So he's either got same players or Chargers players. Now, actually, on the defense, this is where I give Mick an edge. Mick has some good defensive players there. He's got Calvin Mack at the defensive end, which you get a lot of points out of from that position. You don't really see a whole lot of points at defensive line. Also Martinez, the linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. Surprisingly, Zach Ertz is right now on the bench. There's some injury issues right there for Mick. We're going to see whether or not he starts him, but at this time, right now, Zach Ertz is questionable and on the bench. Cam Newton also on the bench in favor of Kirk Cousins. Now, right now, Abalash is favored to win 165 to 156. And guys, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm picking an upset. I'm picking Mick Barton, the number 5 seed, to win it this week. I think Zach Ertz is going to be healthy. I think Kirk Cousins has a great game. I'm picking you, Mickers. I'm going to see you in the next round because you'll probably be the lowest seed, being the number 5 seed, unless Plow beats Joe, which I don't think so. We'll get to that later. So there's my prediction. I'm taking Mick over Abby in a very close one, 162 to 159. There you have it, upset special. Okay, now let's go over to Joe Murdoch in intentional pounding, who clawed his way to the top after starting low, and he locked himself in at the number 3 seed, the highest wildcard team. He's taking on the number 6 team, who got in on a miracle and a prayer, David Plow, and Make America Great Again. And this actually, I don't think this is going to be as close. I don't have a lot of hopeful things to say for Joe Murdoch. I think David Plow's got a really good chance at the Cinderella story continuing. Now, here's the problem with Joe's team. Ezekiel Elliott is gone. He's dealing with injuries, and Plow is getting hot right at the right time. And he's riding Josh McCown. We made fun of him for starting Josh McCown. He's one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football right now. So let's look at Plow's team. Let's look at the bright spots. As I mentioned, Josh McCown. It looks like Tyreek Hill has finally reemerged now that Andy Reid's not calling plays, and Alex Smith can chuck it down the field again. Marquise Goodwin from the Niners is now getting a boost because of Garoppolo now, the QB in San Francisco. Goodwin projected to get around 11 to 12 points. I think he'll probably get that. Here's Plow's biggest advantage. Todd Gurley, who's been unbelievable all year, and one of the reasons he's here right now, and Derrick Henry, who is eating away at DeMarco Murray's carries and clearly the better back in Tennessee. And he's starting him. Even though he's projected to only get 8 points, I think Derrick Henry's going to have a great game against the Arizona Cardinals. Derrick Henry there, and Jimmy Graham at the tight end. Now, Jimmy Graham's got some injuries, questionable. He will most likely start. He's projected at 13 against the good Jacksonville defense. I forgot they're good this year. The defense is really good. They've got some great linebackers that can cover tight ends. And Marvin Jones Jr. in the flex. So he's going 3 receivers. Now, let's look at Joe's team. Now, Joe has probably the MVP of the league, Russell Wilson. Big points getter. He's scoring all the touchdowns, and he's going against Jacksonville. Now, I know Jacksonville's tough, but it's Jacksonville. Okay, let's be honest. It's an AFC South team, and Russell Wilson will get his points against Jacksonville. I think he gets a little bit above his projected, which is 23. I think he gets 30 this week. But the old man, Larry Fitzgerald, still producing for Joe Murdoch, going against the Titans, projected to get 16 points. I'm not too sure about Marquise Lee for the Jaguars. That's where I kind of have issues at his wide receiver 2. And the running backs, again, I give Plow the advantage as he's got Alfred Morris taking Ezekiel Elliott's spot, who had a couple of good games, but he's boom or bust. And Lamar Miller, who is going against the 49ers, a favorable matchup against that not-so-great 49er defense. And I don't like Clay at tight end for the Buffalo Bills for Joe. This is just not Joe's week. Also, Joe's got somebody. He's got the cornerback from. He's got Peters suspended. He's got him suspended, so he's got to scramble and find somebody. As well as he had Shazier got his back broke. He's out too, and Cam Chancellor, he's out too. So Joe dealing with a wide variety of injuries. And that is why I'm picking another upset. I'm taking Plow, the number 6 seed, to win this week. I'm an upset over Joe Murdoch, who has just suffered through poor injuries and poor timing. I like Dave Plow this week, and it's going to be close too. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be like Plow 158 and Joe 151. I think this game will come down to Sunday Night Football. That, by the time Sunday Night Football happens, we'll see who shakes out, the dust clears, who's going to be the winner. I still like Plow. Wow, what an unbelievable start to the playoffs. Now let's hit up the Hoffa bracket real quick. As you can see here, looks like we've got 4 teams in contention for the Hoffa Bowl. Now, the 2 teams that lose this week in the consolation bracket automatically move on to the Hoffa Bowl. So I'm looking at you, Pat. I'm looking at you, Jason. I'm looking at you, Nick Shook. And I'm looking at you, McCready. You 4 are in the running for the Hoffa Bowl. Unfortunately, not your day. It looks like Bloodbath and Beyond has to play Pat. I think this is going to be a bloodbath. Pat, as bad of a season as you've had with so many good points and bad luck, I think you're going to beat Jason this week, so you're safe. Now let's go over to Sons of Shane Falco taking on Indy Snatch Pounders. For some reason, Dave McCready is tanking, and there will be sanctions. I'd say sanctions against U.S. McCready. He has pulled all of his starters except for his kicker, like he wants to win the Hoffa. I have control, and I can put those players in starting position and lock your team out, you piece of garbage. So he's taking on Sons of Shane Falco, who was predicted to win the Hoffa by one Avalosh Reddy earlier on this season. Make the playoffs.
A little prediction. This fella right here. Hey, Nicky. See that right there? He's coming to you, buddy. Pucker up.
So you think
Pucker up.
You just made a prediction. Shook is going to get the Hoffa this year.
I think so.
Woo! That's a hot take.
Hot take, Nation.
Woo! Hot take.
Pucker up, Nicky. He's coming.
Wow. That's quite there you have it. So, looks like Abby was right there. Looks like Nick is going to advance. So, I'm looking for a Nick and Jason Hoffa Bowl. That's right, Jason Servos. You have a chance to win the Hoffa. Yes, this is coming to your house. You've had the trophy, and now you have a chance of getting this moon-faced, horrible figure. The signature face of losing will be forever displayed, well, at least for a season, at your house to remind you how bad you suck this year. But enough of that. So we got our predictions for that. We got a special guest. I'm going live with Mr. David Plow on the first time of L.E.G TV. Welcome, David Plow. How are you? Okay, fair enough. First question, Mr. Plow. Third time in the league, third time's a charm. You finally made the playoffs. What do you attribute most to you getting in the playoffs?
Hey, JD, thanks for having me. So, I finally made the playoffs in my second year in the league. And what do I attribute most? Well, I attribute it less to my success and more to the failure of others. There is no reason for me to be in these playoffs. In fact, in the 2 leagues in which I actually play in, I'm not in the playoffs. I'm near the bottom of the leagues. I suck in all of them. I am a terrible fantasy football owner this year, and somehow all you oafs aren't good enough to beat me. As it is, I'm in the playoffs, and I expect that I'm going to win the championship. Whatever that is.
Wow, those are some pretty bold claims from Mr. David Plow. Humble as always. Could you not eat for like 2 seconds? I'm talking here. Big boy's talking. Now, who is the player or players that you're going to need to score the most to win this week against the heavily favored Joe Murdoch?
Look, it's not going to be easy for me to win this week. I mean, Jordy Nelson was one of my top picks, and without Aaron Rodgers, that's just not working out. Yeah, I'm eating. So what? I'm a busy man. It's the only time I can get this done. So I dropped Aaron Rodgers. I need this, what's his name, Godwin? I don't even know who the he is. I just grabbed him off the waiver wire like I have most of my team.
49ers.
Maybe use a big game out of him. Obviously, Todd Gurley. If Josh McCown could just really get in there and give me like 45 good, hard minutes as a starter, you know, a lot of heart, give it to me. I think I can do it then. I can pull this off. Man, City Barbecue is so good. They're not even paying me for this. This is free publicity. Look at this.
That does look delicious. I do love City Barbecue. I'm not going to lie. Ew, God. Is that how Anderson people eat? Oh.
So, yeah, if I could get a good game out of Aaron Rodgers, I think I win this. Wait. Fuck.
All right, Plow, so what is your prediction for this week?
There's no reason to expect me to win this game. Joe's got a better team. He's had a better season. He's scored more points than me. I'm like Bitcoin. While all you guys have been sitting around not paying any attention, my stock has just continued to rise. My team's been better. I've put together wins. In fact, let's call it. I'm going to win. I'm going to win this league. I'm going to win this matchup. And then, I don't know, party like a Gronk star. Hop on my... There's a kid over there.
Okay, there we go. Well, Plow, even though you don't like your chances, I think you're going to win this week in a close one against Joe. I've got 2 upset specials this week. And I'm just getting word that we are actually going to be joined live by last year's L.E.G champion for the first time on the show live. Dan Nickel is going to join us. We're going to pipe him in here. There he is, Dan. I'm sure he's going to have something very wise and insightful to say. What is your prediction, Dan, for this year's playoffs?
This year's winner will be whoever is sitting in the 5th seed. Go yourself.
Okay, I was wrong. Good night, everybody. Good luck in the playoffs. We'll see you next time. Take care. Woo! Monday.